Hello, lovelies. Welcome to Horror 421, the podcast, with your host, your friendly small-town horror author, Charles Campbell. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the frights in this week's episode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Horror 421, the podcast. I'm your host, small town horror author Charles Campbell, and today I have a very special guest. He's a returning champion. He was with us last season for an episode. He's a very prolific writer. I love his work. I've read 2 of his books. He's got a lot more than that out there. But welcome back to the show, Robbie Dorman.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for having me back. Returning champion. I need to finish the story.
That's right. Finish the story, Cody Rhodes. That's what we need. I am a wrestling fan. I think you're a wrestling fan, so hopefully the wrestling fans get it.
I hope. I mean, if they don't, you should. Hey, if you're not a wrestling fan, why aren't you watching wrestling? It's never been a better time. It literally has never been a better time to be a wrestling fan.
You're absolutely right. Love it. So, Robbie, you've got a new book coming out, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But if you can, kind of let my listening audience know what you've been up to since we last chatted. What's been going on in Robbie Dorman's world?
I believe, from my recollection, it was right before I was building up to the release of This Book is Cursed.
You are correct, sir.
Yeah, and it is cursed. It is. I ran into some minor legal trouble with it because of the Choose Your Own Adventure people. Don't like you using those words. They believe they own those words, and since they have lots of money and lawyers, I guess they do. So I got it. I had to fight. That came out. I had to fight for it after it got pulled from most storefronts. I had to fight to get it back up and change the blurb and change the cover. You have the limited edition cover. That cover does not exist anymore.
A collector's item, y'all.
It is. There's less than 100 there's less than 100 of those out in the world. So I had to fight for that. It was very tiring. But I got it. I'm through it. I'm over it. I can laugh about it now. I suffered through the whole thing, but right now it's fine. I released Yours Forever in this past September. In my first hardcover. I got a hardcover here, which is really beautiful book, and I found a new artist for that for the cover, which always used the same artist before that. So it's like a departure for me. It's also a departure for me from in style, and that is first person. It's an epistolary.
Okay.
I've only written in third person up until then, so that's a different thing. That came out. I've gotten lots of people seem to like it. I am now building to the release of the next book, Words of Christ in Red, in April. I have also started doing seminars for novel writing. I'm constantly trying to do more with the same amount of time.
Yeah. Well, that's tough to do, man. But you're killing it. I've still only read 2 of your books because I've been busy writing my own. But I definitely want to check out your latest release that's available for pre-order. Really has me intrigued. And I read the little blurb description on your website, and I know it centers around a young, charismatic, hot-tempered pastor named David Ingram. But without giving too much away, I don't want you to sit here and tell us the entire plot of the book,
Right.
Of course, but kind of give my listening audience a little feel of what we have in store with that particular release. And the cover is very interesting too. Go to robbiedorman.com and check out the cover.
I do have I have my proof as well,
cool.
so you can get an idea.
Nice.
I'm waiting for the books to come in before I open up pre-orders. It is Southern Gothic thriller / religious horror novel. It is about a pastor is the main character, a young gay pastor. Very important plot point because he takes over a church in a rural southern town and faces trouble. I can see that. Yeah, the church itself is kind of split and he's trying to put it back together. And The Words of Christ in Red is the title because I had received, when we moved back to Florida, I had received my childhood Bible from my mother that I got on my 7th birthday, because it's dated for when I received it. And it's a red letter Bible. And if your listeners aren't familiar, red letter Bibles are Bibles where Christ's words are all printed in red ink. And it just struck me, like, I didn't remember that. I didn't really remember anything. Like, I got it when I was 7, and I'm sure I carried it for a while, but when I was a kid, I don't really have many of those memories anymore. And it just, that phrase, words of Christ in red, really. And that's a lot of the time when I'm getting ideas, like, it's just phrases. I'll like, oh, that's really evocative. What unspools after I hear that phrase? And I heard this phrase, and I was like texting with a friend, and who's an ex-evangelical, as you know, I believe is a hashtag on social media a lot of the times. The people who have gotten out of the super evangelical churches, which I was a member as a child. And we were texting back and forth, and I just kept getting more ideas, and I was like, well, I want it. I had, and this book I am a pretty strict outliner. And this is a book that I think I pantsed a lot on. A lot of stuff came to me as I was writing, and that was so good I had to keep going. But it's about religion, but it's not only about that. It's about anger.
Right.
Pastor David, he's trying to be the best person he can be. He has so much anger in him that he holds back and holds back and holds back, and oftentimes warranted anger. Like situations, you should be angry, you should be upset, but he wants to be a better person. And I've had in the past a bad temper, and it's like, how do you be that better person, especially in situations where you're supposed to be angry? When you're angry at bad people, you're angry at people that how it's not fair that they have the life they have, the way they act, the way they behave on a daily basis, and it's also about, like, I tend to do this a lot in my books, but it's about identity and like owning a thing, because he considers himself a Christian. He considers himself a good Christian, and I don't. The book itself is not like, it doesn't say, "Oh, Christianity is bad." It is more putting these players in this situation and seeing how it all carries out. And his antagonist, is also thinks he's a Christian. It's the core part of It's the core part of both of their identities. And what happens when you do that and put those people against each other, and you have one person who wants to, and neither of them think they're bad. They both think they're the right person. They think they're doing the good thing. And I love situations like that. And
they're standing in their conviction. Yeah. And they
exactly.
both think
And like, there is that, I don't know. It's a weird thing to say, because I had Atticus Finch in mind, To Kill a Mockingbird, for Pastor David, where it's like this man who's like really upright and like strong-willed and does the right thing. But what happens if Atticus Finch never collapses? He is no matter the burden he is placed on him in the story, he is strong and knows that they're doing the right thing. What happens if someone couldn't withstand that, or wavers even in that strength?
Well,
I could talk about it forever.
No, for sure. I will want you to talk about it, because I found the cover super intriguing, and it really caught my attention. So I'm definitely going to pick that up, and probably a hardcover book, and not a Kindle version or anything like that, or paperback, whatever it's released in. So I'll definitely hit the pre-order button for that one for sure.
It's the cover itself it's a painting of the Passion. But it's in that it ties back into the theme where Pastor David is one of the things he points about the villain, the antagonist. Really, he is the villain, I guess, but I prefer to think of him as an antagonist. Is he focuses on the wrong things? He focuses on the wrong parts of Christianity, about Christ's suffering and about, eternal judgment and hell and brimstone and that kind of that's the kind of thing he keys in on in his religion. And I was like, I just thought, what's more perfect than having, again, it's these paintings that glorify not the great, the good person that Christ was and the teachings about caring for people and charity, but about a very small part of his life where he died.
Yeah. Well, it looks super. Like I said, I'll say it again. It looks super intriguing and
I'm pushing real hard. I'm trying to get people to read it. It's also, fair warning, the darkest thing I've written, the grimmest thing I've written. Some of it was real hard for me to write. I had to take breaks after some of the stuff near the end, especially.
Well, I'm looking forward to giving it a read. I want to back up one release though. You mentioned it briefly, and I kind of missed my radar. Really, I'm gonna be blunt and honest about it. This book is cursed was great, loved it, but you mentioned Yours Forever, and you said it was kind of a departure from your normal style. Is this the one you said you wrote in first person?
Yes, it's an epistolary, so it's
cool.
told in letters.
Well, talk about that a little bit because that may intrigue me as well, man, and my listening audience. But the cover is definitely different.
I had read when I wrote it. I had just finished reading Moby Dick again. Moby Dick's one of my favorite books, and I try and it's a big book, so it is it is a task to get through it.
I've read it. Yeah, it's huge.
But I will say there is the thing I always say about it when people are like, "Oh, I'll never read it. It's too big." I'm like, "Well, the chapters aren't that long. Right. The chapters, there's a lot of them. But they're relatively short, so you can just like do a chapter, right? And then you're like, okay, I'll do another chapter tomorrow or whatever. And eventually you'll get your way through it. I just love it because it's an insane book. Like, you're following the action of the ship and Ahab, and then you take a break for 8 chapters where we talk about whale biology. Like, and it's just like, and then it's considered a classic. It's part of the canon. And yet, if I tried to publish that today, I would get laughed at because you're like, oh, what are you doing? No one's gonna want this. Like, you're taking a break for a bunch of whale biology, or like the commerce built around whale oil and things like that. And but also Melville is a genius writer, and that book, I don't think people understand how much language it basically created whole cloth out of nothing. There are phrases in that we still use to this day. There are references in other art that I picked up on. I'm like, oh, like in Jaws, in the scene when they're all drunk in the ship and they're singing.
They're singing,
They sing a song, and they sing that song because they sing it in Moby Dick. They sing that same song in Moby Dick, and it's the same. It's the same kind of setting. It's trying to remind you of like, oh, it's the white whale. We got to capture this shark. It's meaningful. It's this big, ominous thing of nature that we can't understand. Now I'm just pontificating about Moby Dick. I read Moby Dick and I was really inspired by it. And I was just like, I want to go crazy with my language. I want to be a little bit weird and out there and push myself.
Right.
And at the same time, I had just started reading, do you know Dracula Daily? Do you know what that is?
No.
Okay, so you can, if you Google, anyone listening, go Google Dracula Daily. It's a free newsletter. And what they do, Bram Stoker's Dracula, is also an epistolary. It is told in letters. And each of those letters is dated. And Dracula Daily will, if you sign up for free, they will send you the chapter on the day that it is written.
Cool.
And so it has a finite beginning and a finite end, and you will go. Sometimes there's breaks, because the letters aren't as frequent, but you can basically read Dracula that way, where you're reading it as it's told. And I thought that's such a smart idea that we can really only do now in like the digital age, because it's so easy to mail out, like, oh, just send an email, just have it you have a program that does it for you. And I'm like, I want to do something with an epistolary that's really, and my initial idea was like, oh, I'll do the same thing. I'll email it. And then I went, oh, wait. And after I tried to think about actually doing that, I went, that's impossible. I can't do that. But the thing I wrote, I'd read Millville, but it really reads a lot like Poe. It's a very Edgar Allan Poe type story. It is gothic, and it is the main character is a very Poe like protagonist, where he's ever suffering, and he's very verbose and has a big vocabulary, and it is my very elevator pitch is it's a epistolary gothic horror following our hero as he delves beneath a gothic mansion in search of the stolen heart of his lost love. And he's writing to her, you discover.
Yeah.
It's not a spoiler, but as he delves beneath this mansion, he finds a maze underneath, also not really a spoiler. And then he tries to navigate this maze to find her heart. And there's lots of twists and turns, a lot of mystery about the nature of this. Is it actually her heart? Who is this person? Who is this woman he thinks he's in love with, that he's going to pursue? Like, lots and lots of questions. It is very, I don't know. I love it, but it's also very strange. Most of my books are third person limited, and kind of I do it on purpose, really, because I like that type of story. It's like they're like bullets, like they travel in a straight path, not a lot of tangents, not a lot of side pathing. Like, it's like only the meat, no fat.
Right.
This book it's a little bit. It's not. I still think it's pretty lean, but it feels a little bit more
chewy.
expansive,
A
little chewy, a little bit more expansive, a little bit more wandering. Even though at the end of the day, I think actually it's not. The true secret is that it's not a wandering book. It just feels like it is. But even that is very different from me, where all my books feel like I could have added probably 10 more chapters, and it probably wouldn't be too much like fat in there. But I like getting to the action and staying with it and getting to the end as fast as possible.
Gotcha. Yeah,
This is different.
The opening, I'm going to share this with the listening audience. You can go to robbiedorman.com and check out the little blurbs on each of his books. But the beginning of it kind of pulled me in, and it's a lot of what you said. But Henry Collinsworth writes to his lost love as he searches for her stolen heart. His hunt has brought him to the house, a Gothic mansion located outside a cancerous town built by the villainous architect. The architect has locked her heart inside, and Henry seeks to reclaim it and deliver her unto salvation. So that's a great little synopsis in your first little paragraph in the description. So that's pretty captivating, man. Sounds like a good read.
I mean, I'm obviously very biased, but I think it's great. I did get it. It was on the recommended reading list for the Stoker, so that's the first time I've never gotten that for a Stoker. I've never gotten that before. It didn't get any farther than that, but whatever.
Well, hey, still.
Yeah, I mean, that's I received that news. I'm like, really? Okay, cool, awesome, that's great. I love it, but I mean, it is very different for me. But I don't know. I tend to do that. I tend to bounce around, write lots of different subgenres and different things. It's hard for me to write similar books.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. If you look at your catalog, and I think are you up to book 16 or 17? I can't remember.
Words of Christ in Red will be 17.
17. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, if you look at his website and his catalog of books, they are very different. The subjects are very different. That's a good thing. I like that. And we may have talked about this on the previous podcast last year, but out of everything you've written, do you have something that stands out in your mind? Something that was kind of more of a challenge than you thought it would be to write and get through. If that makes sense.
I mean, they're all my babies, but all the births are different. So some are easy. No pain, a couple hours and you're done, metaphorically. And then others are, belabored and take a lot of effort. Like Splatterfest was really hard because it's a murder mystery. It's a whodunit. And I wrote a first draft and I came back to it. I'm like, this isn't good enough. It's not, I want it to be good. And I had to, it was a lot of work. It was really hard. You gotta, something like that has to be, it's very kind of, you have to hit, you want the best murder mysteries. They're solvable. Like if you pay attention, you can solve it. You can figure out who did it, but they're not easy to solve. You don't know it right away.
Exactly.
There have to be some red herrings. There have to be all these secret, and there have to be a couple elements that make you go, oh, I didn't notice that. I didn't realize it. It connect the dots. And I really wanted that. And the first draft didn't have it. So it took a lot more work to get it done. Something
Oh,
like that was hard. Something like this most recent book, Words of Christ in Red, is hard largely because it was me really trying to pare down my language to really cut out a lot of things that I normally might kind of the things I lean on a lot
right.
to in my style, and I really wanted to pare it down and cut those things out and give. I wanted emotion to push the story forward. I didn't want I wanted it as little exposition as possible, as little interiority as possible. I wanted the character, like I want David's and Eli, the antagonist, I wanted their core emotions to push the story forward. So it's a lot of me making conscious decisions about my language. Also, the subject matter is really rough at times in the book. So you're like writing something, and I don't know. I think there is like a stereotype about horror writers, and that we're like scary and full of dark thoughts and stuff like that. Well, the opposite is mostly true. Most of us are teddy bears and are very kind and gentle people. And so I love writing stories where horrible things happen, but in the handful of books where I write truly despicable things, I take breaks. I have to
Yeah.
after I write a hard chapter. I'm like, okay, I need to like go pet my dog or something. I'm like, I need
Yeah.
to like hang out.
Yeah.
I need to detox really, and like so.
Decompress.
Yeah, exactly. Like I need something cozy and sweet and not bad. Like I want to be reminded of the good stuff and not the bad stuff of people.
Oh, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. I completely agree, man. We kinda get pigeonholed a little bit. I have a neighbor up the street, and, she's a nice lady, and I've given her a couple of my books, and she's read them and for the most part likes them. But, she kinda every time she talks to me, "So what are you writing today, creepy Campbell?" And I'm like and within the book, everything is not, well, for my books anyway, everything is not, you know, gore and scary and
no,
hard,
yeah,
and
yeah,
you've got story elements. You're building characters. You're making people feel something for these people, and if you read my books, you're not always going to get a happy ending, but sometimes you do. I mean,
same.
yeah, yeah. Sometimes you do. Sometimes the hero wins. Sometimes the hero doesn't win. But they're all going to have elements of uh, good and bad. And I mean, I'm breaking it down very simplistically, but uh, we're deeper than what people think we are. Is what I'm trying to say.
I mean, I don't know. It's just I write horror because it is, or
Yeah,
mostly horror, because it is the most interesting playground for me to be in. Like because it is it's an extreme, right? It's
same. Yeah,
you get to see people push to their furthest limits, both good and bad. And that's my favorite thing about writing a horror book is that very rarely people go, "Oh, that could never happen." I go, well, yeah, I know that. Like, I mean, one, that's certainly not true. I think every day we see
oh
things on
yeah,
the news that I go, oh, now I can't use that in a book anymore because it's too boring. It's already been done. But I don't write horror because I get some like sadistic glee out of it. I use it because it's a cool place to hang out, and a lot of my like I don't know story seeds and ideas feel natural there. They feel like they
right.
belong. I don't need. I don't know. There. I do get the. It's always very funny to me when I sell books at conventions and people I could like can pick it out even where they go like you and you mentioned your old lady neighbor, but they you'll get an older lady walk by and kind of look at me. She's like, I'm like, hey, how's it going? And then she looks at me and she's like, oh, books. And then she's like, oh, horror books. She's like, oh, I
I
don't read. I don't read
oh,
horror.
I get the same shit, man. It just drives me crazy.
And I'm like, why not? I mean, it's a lot of. I try. I'm like, I'm really like, why not? Why not? Or like, oh, I get scared. I'm like, I don't. I mean, I guess I'm the outlier in some cases. Like, I don't get scared by books.
Yeah,
I can get disturbed by things I read, or I can get like haunted, like
yeah.
where I think about something for a long time. But I don't really get scared by books, and I'm not looking. When I'm reading a horror book, it's because oftentimes I want to be pushed. I want to be challenged, right? It's not. I don't want to feel safe in the fiction I'm digesting, and I don't. It feels a lot of times I'm like, and I'm always the person who's like, when no matter what you read, I'm always like trying to like you should read something that challenges you, and I think horror is a great place for that. But when people go, well, I don't read horror, and they have this look on their face like, how I could never, I couldn't. I'm like, why not? It's you're missing great books. You're missing great stories. They're legitimately some of the best books ever written are horror novels, and you're missing out.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. And you'll find yourself a lot of times, and I even tell people uh, at conventions or book signings or things like that, and they're like, "Well, what would you recommend that I start with?" And I'm like, "Well, kind of what do you like?" And I
Mm-hmm.
even present some of my books as not necessarily horror. They're horror, but there's horror and there's horror, if that makes sense. Uh, I will say this book has horror elements.
Right.
Like yeah, and there are some scary things in it, but it's more of a love story than it is a horror story, if that makes sense. Uh, but it's all in the way people perceive it, man. And I get the same people that come by, oh, horror. I don't read that stuff, but I don't challenge them like you do. I just let them walk.
I mean, it depends. It depends if
Yeah,
they stop it. If they're stopping and standing, like I very rarely talk to people if they're just. I'm not a carnival barker. I don't have the energy to
yeah.
deal with that. So
I
I'm
like
just
that
like if
expression, carnival barker. I might remember
yeah. I
that.
mean that's if you
Yeah.
ever at enough conventions, those types of those
Oh
people
yeah.
who are yelling at people anyone who walks by. And I'm like, and I guess if that's how they make their living, if that's what they got to
Yeah.
do, but if they stop for a moment and want to talk,
Same. Yeah.
and also like you get bored real easy. So you're like, I tried, but I want to be active and engaged with people who are ready to come up. So it's that mix like, oh, I'm going to have a conversation with you. And if you don't want to talk to me, you can just walk away. It's very easy. Like you have it easy. You can just walk away, go anywhere else on the floor or in the bookstore or wherever. It's, I don't know. And yet in the same breath they'll say they read thrillers, and a lot of and the I think I said this at a event I went to last weekend. I'm like, that's just marketing. Like calling something a thriller versus calling something a horror novel. Like my books all are thrillers. Really, I write stuff that moves with fast pace. That's really intent on heavy action and meaningful like scenes. Like I don't write. There's not like I don't write literary like just wanderings where people are in
Right.
someone's head for 3 days. Things
Right.
happen.
Right.
That's a thriller, or it's a suspense story. It's a mystery. Those are all my books are all those things because I think that's just elements. That's good fiction. People are like, what if your books have mystery? I'm like, all of my books have mystery because that's how you tell a good story. You leave some questions unanswered so that you want to keep reading, and it makes the story exciting. But they're not necessarily only mysteries, but the horror a lot of times is you could boil it down to how much blood is in the book. And I'm like, well, I feel like that's very, I don't know, condescending when you're like, oh, that book is bloody, so it's horror. I'm like, okay, sure. Whatever you say. I don't, I have a little, if you come to buy a book for me at a convention or something, I have a little menu that describes all the books, and it looks like a hot chicken. I stole the design from a hot chicken restaurant I went to I went to in Austin, Texas a lot of times, and they had at the chicken restaurant they had a little scale for how spicy you want your chicken.
Oh,
You
that's
pick
a
the
good
number.
idea, man. That's
So I just stole it and I do it for how much blood is in the book, right? So if you want a little bit of blood, or
nice.
almost none, I have books that have very little
Right.
violence, just a little bit, just to escalate things, but very little. And then I have books that do have are pretty gosh dang gory, and pretty disgusting to most people. But I
Yeah, I
don't,
think Splatterfest would be a clue.
I know that's the thing. Like I also, I mean, Splatterfest is actually not my most gory book, but it has. This is the other example I give people is that if I was pulling reviews for an ad for Splatterfest recently, and I was looking at my reviews, and these are both 5-star reviews. One says a great gory whodunit, so in the title, gory, uh, and then another one says in their long review, they're like, I expected more violence. It's really not that bloody, and I'm like, which is it, right? Because it varies so heavily between people.
Exactly.
Some people think they can watch Terrifier while eating steak and they don't think twice about it, like it's not a big deal. While others, a drop of blood is too much. They want none. So I don't know what to. I try and stay true to my vision, right? And I think some books are suitable. You don't want the violence because the terror is nothing to do with the threat of violence. When the threat of violence is important, there should be gore, there should be blood, there should be violence. But in when the fear is, oh, I'm going to lose my husband to a demon, like one of my possession book. She's the wife is the protagonist. She's not worried about much like him dying.
Right.
She's worried about losing his soul, his identity. He's like, oh, he's going to be used by a demon to do these horrible things, and his identity, his name will lose the reputation he spent his whole life building.
Hello, everyone. I have something to admit right now. You're watching part 2 of Horror 421, the podcast with Robbie Dorman. We got 31 minutes into our recording session last week, and due to technical difficulties, that's all we got. So we're going to redo part 2. So welcome back, Robbie. I know to our audience, you haven't gone anywhere, but thank you for coming back and wrapping this up. I do appreciate it.
It's like a Taylor Swift concert. I had an outfit change right in the middle.
Nice. Well, you know what? I purposefully wore the same shirt.
Oh, well, sorry. I'm ruining continuity.
No. You didn't ruin it all. I admitted it up front. But
Yeah.
anyway, so when we left, when we were cut off, we were talking about, your experiences with horror conventions and readers and folks who come up to the table
Oh,
and
yeah.
and are interested. So we can kind of finish on that topic. But to recap, you were talking about when people who really act like they're not interested in horror and they come up and talk to you about, what you have. And the discussion was, we do more than horror. So if you want to,
Yeah. I mean, it's, I, when people walk, it's like a skill now at this point. I can see it in people even before they say anything to me, where they are, when you're selling books at a non-book convention, basically,
right.
you're trying to get readers, right? There's a lot of people who don't read anything, and so you're not going to probably sell a book to them. And I don't really waste a lot of energy, trying to sell a book to those people. But you do get some readers who go, "Oh, I read, but I don't read horror."
Right.
And I always go, "Why not? Why?" Especially today, like there's so much great horror books, stuff like you're missing. If you are a reader, you are missing so much by just going, oh, I don't read that one genre. And I would say that I mean, I read all genres. I read everything because I don't want to miss things. If something's a great book, if it's a great fantasy book or a great sci-fi book or a great literary book or whatever, romance even, I don't want to miss it. I don't want to miss out on great writing because, I don't read that. Well, no, I want to try and read everything. And I try and be a proselytizer, not for my books in necessarily, although I do that, but I try and proselytize. Hey, read horror. It's good for you. I believe that. I mean, like my bio in my books always say, I believe in horror. I do. I believe it's good for you to read and expose yourself to horror. It in multiple ways. It's can be fun and cathartic, like a great slasher movie where you like, oh, you have that rush of adrenaline, and inevitably the final girl wins, survives, and you go, oh, you get that release. And in the other half of it, and this is kind of a more modern thing, like with A24
Oh
movies or
yeah.
Bloom, where it's like it's challenging. It's like pushing like some kind of, like it wants to make you think and really challenge what you think of and how you process fear and dread and trauma and bad feelings and stuff like that. And I think there's room
Oh yeah.
for both of those things. And I think if you're not, I'm also the person who buys people books that are filled with upsetting things, and then they go, Robbie, I didn't like that book. And I'm like, why? It's really good. It's really well written and it's really intense. And they're like, no, it's too intense. I just wanted something nice. I'm like, oh well, I don't. I like to think that sometimes I don't want nice. Sometimes I want mean. I want, something that's going to push on me. Even if something I don't, not even if I don't like I read books all the time that I don't like. I didn't, that I would say I don't enjoy them.
Right.
But I'd want to try and push that.
Oh, geez. I read a book well, it was last year, the year before. Elena Morales, my partner in crime who used to co-host the podcast. And damn it, man, I need to go look up the author's name, but you guys can go look it up. The name of the book is Womb,
Oh yeah.
Woom.
Oh
Did you
yeah.
read
Yeah.
that? Oh,
Yeah.
geez. That book fucked me up.
I mean, I, I mean, in like among us, if you talk to any horror author, that's always like, oh, I need to go read it then.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I need to, like, maybe not tomorrow, but it's gonna go on my TBR. It's gonna go on my list. Like, oh, I need to expose myself to that. I just read some Nathan Ballingrud, which I had not read in a very long time. North American Lake Monsters, and he's another guy. Like every single story in that is like punching you in the stomach, and you're like, but I immediately went, oh wow, this is why everyone suggested this for so long. Like
yeah.
everybody I knew was always like, you should read some, and now I have, and I go, oh yeah, of course. But it's also like heavy and very upsetting, and like you're just, but that's it's not like a thing I'll read every day, but
Exactly.
I do want to read that. I want to, and because I do also believe as a writer that it can challenge what you can write about. It challenges like, oh, I can make a story out of this versus like it challenges me in multiple ways versus just as a reader. But even as a reader, I would say go read, push. I
Exactly.
mean, I'm preaching to the choir probably with
Oh
your
yeah,
listeners,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but yeah,
But and to your point, other forms of entertainment can push you to different genres of literature. A special point for me is I'm a big Justified fan. Love that show. Love Timothy Oliphant. Love everything about that show. But I never really read any Elmore Leonard. But that show pointed me in
Elmore
that
Leonard,
direction. Yeah,
man, so good.
yeah,
Like it's one of those guys when you read Elmore Leonard, you're like, I need to get better. I
yeah,
can like this is it's so good. You're like
exactly.
every so often you get those writers that like humble you. You're like, oh, I need to step up. I need to do better.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's amazing. So the show Justified pushed me in his direction because the storytelling and with the opening episode, Fire in the Hole, and then I went back and read the book. I was like, oh man, that's yeah, yeah. So you can find your literature anywhere if you can look at the source of things. If you see a movie you like, a television show, 9 times out of 10, there's some source material behind it that's written by an author before it became a screenplay or a television show. And a lot of times, those are even better than the visual product. So, yeah, you are preaching to the choir. And I did make an announcement in the last podcast that I was going to pre-order your latest release, Words of Christ in Red, and I did that.
Oh,
So
thank you. I
I
appreciate
will
it.
I will be getting that. I pre-ordered it from Amazon. I encourage my audience to do the same. Um, and with that said, Robbie, I want you to plug away, man. Tell us, you can recap. We did talk about it in this earlier in the podcast,
Right.
but recap what we're going to get in Words of Christ in Red,
It
and where we can
is,
find it.
yeah. It is coming out on April 18th, Good Friday. It is a Southern Gothic thriller slash religious horror novel. I pitched it I had pitched it as like an S.A. Cosby social thriller slash cross with like Mandy, star Nicolas Cage movie
I've seen it.
Mandy. Yeah, it's a great movie, but
Yep.
that was my original idea in my head, was like I wanted something that is a more like progressive thriller, but also weird phantasmagoria devolving into madness and blood. Um, it is about a gay pastor trying to heal a divided church in a small southern town, and facing a unhinged zealot who is in the church and has been in it since his family has been in it since the very beginning. It is about religion. It's about violence. It's about anger. It's about suffering. And it is, I think it's the best thing I've ever written. I want you to read it. If you haven't read of anything from me, this is the one you should go read. This. I don't. You might love it. You might hate it even. But I think I want that. I want a strong reaction, which is what I was going for. I was like, if every single step along the way when I was writing this, I was like, what's the biggest thing I can do in any one moment in the story? And that's what I did. The most extreme, like hardest hitting. When I mentioned Nathan Ballingrud and the stomach punches, that is this book. It was hard for me to write at times. It was so mean, honestly. You can pre-order it. You can go to my website, which is just robbiedorman.com, or, everywhere you buy books, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, etc. You can pre-order it. You go to I have links in my website, but I mostly assume that people have some modicum of Google skills where they can just
Oh
Google
yeah.
my name
Oh yeah,
or
yeah,
the
yeah.
book and find it. But my website will have it. My social media will have it. I'm posting about it every day. I'm trying to go really hard. I'm trying to get the word out there as much as I can. Um, I do have lots of other books too. So I'd love you to go read those too, but pre-orders are very meaningful to especially indie authors. Getting that big initial push, it helps you get those early reviews, which help get more sales later on. But I believe in this thing. I really love this book, and I want as many people as possible to read it.
And just like
Uh,
Robbie said, I went to his website, robbiedorman.com. He's got all the links are there. So if you don't want to remember Amazon or Barnes and Noble or Books a Million or wherever you get your books, just go to robbiedorman.com. He's got all the links there. Super easy to pre-order. Click the pre-order link. It'll take you to Amazon, take it to wherever you want, and you can pre-order the book. And the cover, I love the cover. It's that's what really caught me. It really drew me in. Then I read the little snippet and I was like, oh yeah, I definitely want to read this. So I
I
got my pre-order in.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. Whenever anyone who does that, and you as an author also know this, like when someone tells you that they pre-ordered the book, you're like, oh my God, thank you so much.
Exactly.
I love
Exactly.
you. You're my best friend.
You're my best friend to my next sale. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're all my best friends.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
all my
yeah.
best friends. I mean, and somehow that's true. Somehow
Yep.
I wholeheartly believe, yeah, my readers, and if you come up to me and say I bought one of your books and read it, I'd be like, oh, you're my best friend. You're the best.
And before we get off the podcast in this part two, I do want to talk to you briefly. 2024 was a big year for horror films, and I don't know. I listened to our first person earlier, and I don't know if we touched on this a whole lot. Um, what was your standout horror movie for 2024? What really jumped out at you? I posted on Instagram the other day. Mine was Late Night with the Devil.
I
Um,
was gonna say I made a concerted effort. I saw a lot of movies last year, and I think Late Night Nosferatu slid there right in at the end.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
I still think Late Night with the Devil was my favorite horror movie of the year. It was so like different
Yes.
than everything else, and I really liked it. I will also give a shout out to In a Violent Nature,
Yep.
which was, I know, very divisive among people. Some people I knew hated it, but I thought it was so different, so interesting. I think Late Night with the Devil is still my number one, and Nosferatu is also great, but Nosferatu's got plenty of press. Everyone
Yeah,
loves that
yeah.
movie.
Robert Eggers has it going on, so
Yeah, I mean,
you know
he's great.
he gets
I
enough
would,
love.
but In a Violent Nature, like it made me think differently about slashers,
Yeah,
which I like. Anytime I see anything that's like, oh, we're gonna do this a very different way, I go, hmm, all right. But Late Night of the Devil, so good. God, I need
yeah.
to watch it again, honestly.
I watched it 2 days ago again, and
Oh man, I need to rewatch it.
I ordered the box set from Umbrella Entertainment, and it came a while back, but I ordered the wrong box set.
Oh
It was
no,
good. No, it was still great. I mean, and I've got it, and I'm not going to reorder anything because I'm not that nuts where I'm going to order 5,000 copies of something. But
yeah.
I thought it included the mock TV guide, and
Oh,
that looks really freaking cool.
I
Somebody's
love it. I love when they put in the physical media stuff, like the little like Easter eggs
yeah.
from the actual. Like it feels like it's real. It makes it feel more
They
like
have a
lived in.
mock TV guide, and I thought my bundle came with that, but it came with the Confessions of the Devil book he
Oh,
showed. It came with
oh,
that little book,
let's see.
and I was it's still cool, but man, I was like, oh, I want to see this TV guide, and then I see people post on Instagram this TV guide, and I'm not going to go to eBay and buy the freaking TV guide, I promise, but it's tempting, man. That TV guide looks pretty cool. One other thing I want to bring up, and I brought it up earlier in the podcast. Uh, Certainly pre-order his latest book for sure. But if you guys like the thing, go check this out. And I've already talked about this ad nauseum, but go check out Underneath. It's so well written. Uh, and if you are a fan of the thing, this is going to put you right there, man. It's claustrophobic, it's scary, it's tense. So check it out. And
Appreciate that.
I bel
One of my beloved Underneath is one of my favorite things I've written, especially that last chapter. I love it. So
oh
it
yeah,
makes me
yeah.
it makes me cry.
Well, it's an amazing book, man, and I'd like to see this on the screen one day somehow, some way. But
I mean, I would not be upset
Yeah,
by
yeah.
that,
No,
but
I could
well,
see it when I'm reading.
yeah.
It's playing in my head.
I often think of my writing as I think of a camera. A
Yeah.
lot of times when I'm writing, I think of moving a camera around cinematic.
Oh yeah,
So it
yeah.
makes sense.
Well, Robbie, I appreciate you coming back and finishing the podcast after my technical difficulties. I kicked the podcast provider that I had to the curb, so I'll be revisiting another provider. But in the meantime, we finished this thing up with good old Zoom.
Good old
And
Zoom.
good old Zoom. And I am Charles Campbell. I'm a small town horror author. Um, and my latest release is called Signature A Cut Above. And John Stoney Cannon did this cover. And it's about a batshit crazy beautician who does some wicked things with those scissors. And it's all set in a small town. And if you are familiar with Highway 421, you will love this book. Ultra, ultra local. But I want everyone in the world to read it if they want. But it's my latest baby. Do have a book coming out later this summer called Three Knocks. It's a story about a brother and sister, and I don't want to give too much away because I'm still writing it, but it's a story about a brother and sister who loses their mother to a malevolent force in the middle of the night after they hear
Three
on their
knocks.
three knocks on their door. So
I like that.
yep, so that'll be coming out late this summer, probably August is what I'm thinking. But anyway, you can find my stuff at valleyboypublications.com. You can find all my social media links there. You can find Robbie Dorman on Instagram. You can go to his website, robbiedorman.com. And that's all I got. Robbie, I'll give you the last word, the last goodbye, but I'm done.
Oh, I mean, you said it. My website, robbiedorman.com. I'm most active on Instagram. Unfortunately, they're all bad. That's the problem. All the social media is bad. But also go subscribe to my newsletter. If you don't want social media at this point, which I get, I understand. Subscribe to my newsletter. It comes out once a month. Has all the important information, new releases. We'll give you heads up on appearances, and also you get 2 free ebooks exclusive to the newsletter,
Nice.
just for signing up. And I'm very proud of both of them. They're both really good books, and they're not in print. They are only to newsletter subscribers.
Nice. All right.
So there you go.
That's a good way to end the show. You guys take care. Have a good night, day, weekend, wherever you're at. Take peace.